Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. We are going to tackle, I think, something that we all struggle with.
Oh, yeah,
Procrastination.
for sure.
Putting things off, the sneaky art of avoiding things that need to get done. And actually,
Mm,
you guys sent in some really fascinating material about how to beat procrastination. So that's what we're going to dive into today.
Cool.
It goes way beyond, like, making a to-do list,
Cool.
really kind of digs into the why behind it. And some of these strategies are surprisingly insightful.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the source. It kind of hit the nail on the head. It's not just about being lazy,
Yeah.
right? It's
Right.
often an emotional response.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What do they mean by that?
So our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Yeah, makes sense.
So when we're faced with a task that triggers any kind of negative feelings, you know, fear, anxiety, even just boredom, we instinctively try to avoid it.
That makes total sense. It's like when I have a doctor's appointment I've been putting off. Suddenly reorganizing my entire spice rack seems super urgent.
Yeah, exactly. And the source actually gives a good example, they say, avoiding a work project. Because you're afraid of failing,
Oh, for
our
sure.
brains are just kind of protecting us in a way from those uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah, it's like self-sabotage almost.
Mhm.
Okay, but knowing why I procrastinate doesn't just make it go away, so
Yeah.
how do we actually, like, break free?
Well, that's where these 5 strategies that the source lays out comes in, and they are pretty practical, and they build on that whole idea that procrastination is often tied to our emotions.
All right, I'm ready. Let's hear it.
So the first one is breaking those big, daunting tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
I've heard that before, but the way that this source explained it really clicked for me. It's
Yeah,
about those small wins, right?
totally. You're reducing that initial feeling of being overwhelmed, which is often the biggest trigger for procrastination.
Yeah.
And then you start to build momentum and you just feel more capable.
Yeah, it's like instead of trying to climb Mount Everest in one go,
Yeah,
you're setting up those base camps along the way.
I like that.
It makes the whole thing seem less impossible.
That's a good analogy. So then, building on this idea of momentum, the source suggests another strategy. The 2-minute rule?
2-minute rule. That sounds almost too easy. What's the catch?
It might sound simple, but it's actually based on a pretty interesting psychological principle. It's this idea of using micro commitments to break down resistance.
Okay.
So if a task takes less than 2 minutes, you just do it immediately.
Okay.
No excuses.
That makes sense for things like responding to an email or putting away the laundry. But, like, what about those bigger projects that just loom over you?
Well, that's the second part of the rule comes in. For those larger tasks, you commit to working on them for just 2 minutes.
Okay.
It sounds kind of silly, right?
I'll admit I'm a little skeptical, but I'm kind of starting to see where you're going with this.
It's all about overcoming inertia.
Hmm.
Getting started is often the hardest part, and once you've committed even for those 2 minutes, you're way more likely to keep going.
Oh, so you're tricking your brain into thinking it's no big deal, and then all of a sudden you're actually making progress.
Yeah.
I can see how that could be really effective.
Yeah.
Especially for someone like me who tends to overthink things.
Exactly. You're outsmarting those procrastination tendencies.
Okay. I like this so far. 2 down. What's next?
All right, this next one's all about being ruthless, eliminating distractions.
Ooh. This is where I need to pay attention.
Yeah.
Distractions are like my kryptonite.
Yeah.
My phone, it's a black hole for productivity.
I think a lot of us can relate to that. The key is to be really intentional about minimizing them.
Yeah.
And that means figuring out what your biggest time wasters are. Is it social media? Is it email? Is it that Netflix show you're binging?
For sure.
Figure it out and then come up with a plan to limit access during work time.
It's easier said than done. But the source does offer some practical tips, like using website blockers or apps that limit your screen time. I found that just putting my phone in another room helps a lot.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
So you're just removing those temptations. You're setting yourself up for success.
Okay. So we've got break it down, 2-minute rule, eliminate distractions. What's the next weapon in our arsenal?
Strategy number 4. Set a deadline.
Okay.
This is where things get a little more scientific.
Ooh, deadlines. Now we're talking. I thrive under pressure, so this one speaks to me.
Me too. And there's a reason for that. The source talks about Parkinson's law, which states that work expands to fill the time available.
Right.
So if we give ourselves a week to finish a task, it's probably going to take us the whole week. But if we have a tight deadline, our brains kind of kick into gear and we just work more efficiently.
Yeah, it's like those last-minute study sessions before an exam. Suddenly you can focus and absorb information like a sponge.
Exactly. So harness that power of deadlines. Don't be afraid to set ambitious targets for yourself.
Okay, I'm fired up. What's the final strategy?
This one might be my favorite. Reward yourself.
Now, that's a strategy I can get behind. Who doesn't love a good reward?
And it's not just about feeling good, it actually reinforces those positive behaviors and makes even those tedious tasks feel a little bit more bearable.
It's like having something to look forward to, a
Yeah.
little light at the end of the tunnel. But obviously, we want to choose rewards that support our goals, not sabotage them. So what are some good options?
Well, the source encourages us to get creative. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Maybe it's taking a break to listen to your favorite podcast,
Are you suggesting they listen to the deep dive?
perhaps. Or maybe it's spending time in nature, trying a new recipe, or just curling up with a good book. The key is to choose something that genuinely feels rewarding to you.
I love that. So to recap, we've got break it down, 2-minute rule, eliminate distractions, set deadlines, and reward yourself. I'm feeling inspired. But I'm curious, does the source give any real-world examples of these strategies in action? Because sometimes it helps to see how it all comes together.
You're in luck, they do.
Hmm.
The source tells the story of a student named Alex who was struggling with procrastination.
Okay, tell me everything. Okay, so tell me about Alex. How did he go from procrastination king to productivity master?
Well, Alex was your typical student, constantly battling that urge to put things off. But then he discovered these strategies and decided to give them a shot. What's interesting is that he didn't try to overhaul his entire life at once. He started small. He focused on one key area, his study habits.
Okay, that's small focused changes are usually more sustainable than trying to do everything at once. So how did he apply the strategies to his studies?
Well, he started by breaking down his study sessions into smaller chunks, using something called the Pomodoro technique.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah,
It's where you work for 25 minutes and then take a short break, right?
exactly. It's a great way to manage your time and energy, especially when you're dealing with something mentally demanding like studying.
Yeah, that makes sense. It kind of turns those marathon study sessions into more like a mental sprint workout.
Exactly. And to minimize distractions, Alex decided to switch up his study environment. He started going to the library instead of trying to study in his dorm room.
Oh yeah, dorm rooms are full of distractions. TV, video games, roommates coming and going.
Yeah.
It's hard to focus.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. So by going to the library, he created this space where his brain could actually settle into the task at hand.
Nice. So he's breaking things down, minimizing distractions. What else?
Well, remember, we talked about the importance of rewards. Alex knew he needed to give himself something to look forward to, so he decided to reward himself after each Pomodoro session.
I like a little something to keep the motivation going. What kind of reward did he choose?
He kept it pretty simple. After each 25-minute study session, he'd give himself a little snack. Something healthy but enjoyable.
Smart. The little treat can go a long way.
Right.
So did he see results?
The results were pretty remarkable. Within a few weeks, Alex had transformed from chronic procrastinator to consistent studier, and the best part is he was actually acing his exams.
Wow, that's amazing. From procrastinating student to star pupil, all thanks to these simple strategies.
It really is an inspiring example. It shows that you don't need some massive life overhaul to overcome procrastination. Just a few small, consistent changes can make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's like building a muscle. You start with small reps, gradually increase the weight, and over time you get stronger. Same thing with productivity. You build those habits one step at a time.
Exactly. And what's interesting about Alex's story is that it highlights how these strategies work together for a more holistic approach. It's not just about using one strategy in isolation, it's about combining them to create a system that works for you.
It's like having a toolkit. You don't use every tool for every job, but you have the right ones at your disposal when you need them. I have to admit, sometimes with all the information out there about productivity and time management, it can feel overwhelming to know where to start. Did the source offer any guidance on that?
That's a great point. And yes, they do. They mention a few other resources that I think could be really valuable, especially if you're feeling a bit lost in the sea of productivity advice.
Ooh, resource recommendations.
Oh, ears. Well, there are a couple of books they mention that I think are worth checking out. One is called Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Oh yeah, Atomic Habits, that's a classic. It's all about how tiny changes can lead to remarkable results. It's a great one for understanding the science of habit formation. What was the other one?
The other one is called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy.
I haven't read that one. What's that about? The title is interesting.
It's this idea that you should tackle your most important task first thing in the morning. That one task you're most likely to procrastinate on. Eat that frog first, and the rest of your day will feel like a breeze.
I love that. And it makes sense. If you can get that big, scary task out of the way, you feel so much more accomplished, and the rest of your to-do list seems much less daunting.
Exactly. So those are a couple of book recommendations. They also mentioned a few apps that can be helpful.
Ooh, apps are always good. What are some of their suggestions?
They mentioned one called Forest, which is a really cool app for staying focused. It basically lets you plant a virtual tree, and if you stay on task and don't use your phone, the tree grows. But if you leave the app, the tree dies.
Oh, that's so clever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to try that one out. What other apps did they mention?
They recommended Todoist for task management. It's a fantastic way to keep track of all your to-dos and make sure nothing falls through the cracks.
I love Todoist. I use it to organize everything.
It's a game changer. And they also mentioned Focus at Will, which is a music app specifically designed to help you focus. It uses neuroscience-backed music to boost your concentration and productivity.
Interesting. I've definitely heard that certain types of music can help you focus. I'm always up for trying new things. So we've got books, apps, anything else in the source that stood out to you?
You know, beyond specific tools and resources, the source emphasizes one simple daily practice that I think is incredibly powerful. They recommend spending just 5 minutes each evening planning your next day.
That's such a good tip. Even just 5 minutes of planning can make a huge difference in how you feel going into the day.
Totally. It helps you prioritize your tasks, set realistic goals, and reduces that feeling of overwhelm when you sit down to work. It's like giving your future self a gift.
I love that. So to recap, we've got books, apps, and a simple planning practice. It sounds like there are plenty of resources out there to help us on our journey to conquering procrastination.
There really are, and the best part is you don't have to try everything at once. Just pick one or two things that resonate with you and see how they work.
I love that. It's all about finding what works best for you and creating a system that supports your individual needs and preferences.
Exactly. And that brings us to the key takeaway from this whole deep dive. We've uncovered those often hidden emotional roots of procrastination. We've explored those 5 powerful strategies to combat it. And we've even seen how they can work in real life, with Alex's transformation.
Yeah, I think what's really resonating with me is that procrastination isn't some kind of personal failing. It's a habit. And habits, as we all know, can be changed.
That's so important. We can be so hard on ourselves when we procrastinate, but the reality is it's something we can learn to manage and overcome.
Yeah, it's almost like, we've been given permission to be kinder to ourselves in the process.
Mhm.
We're not lazy. Our brains are just trying to protect us from discomfort.
Exactly. And with the right strategies and the right mindset, we can take control of our time and actually achieve those goals we've been putting off.
That's what I find so empowering about this whole conversation. It's not just theory. It's given us practical tools and real-world examples to actually make a change.
Totally. So as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this thought. Think back to those 5 strategies we discussed. Breaking things down, using the 2-minute rule, eliminating distractions, setting deadlines, and rewarding yourself.
Out of those 5, which one feels like it could be your secret weapon against procrastination?
Yeah, which one kind of sparks something in you? That's where the real magic happens. When we take action, even if it's just one small step today.
So true. Even a tiny step forward is still progress. So what's one action you can take today to start moving in the right direction?
We'd love to hear your thoughts, so keep the conversation going. Share your insights, and let's all support each other on this journey to conquer procrastination.
Because together we can break free from that procrastination trap and unlock our full potential. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.